And we are live. What's going on, everybody? This is Brian, the Nerdporeal Life Form, and I am here to talk about the Bond movies since No Time to Die is going to be coming out this week. So, with me is my friend in real life, Marty, the father. So, say hello to everyone, Marty.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad to that the Nerdporeal Life Form requested me to do this video with him. This little stream. I share a lot of similar interests to Brian, so I'm excited to do this little stream and potentially streams in the future.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So James Bond. I mean, we've all heard of him. He's basically a superhero that basically arose out of the Cold War, the '60s. Espionage was the big thing. I mean, people from veterans from World War II that served in intelligence, just came up with so many ideas. And with comics being, be on the rise since the late '30s and stuff, Ian Fleming, a famous World War II veteran and British intelligence officer, basically came up with the idea of a 00 agent and stuff. So I wanted to talk about the movies. And so you and I were both millennials. We both grew up in the 80s, or not 80s. We both grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. So we experienced Bond differently than people older than us, baby boomers and even the World War II generation. So I just wanted to see how we can connect and stuff. So Marty, tell me about like how you got into Bond, or how you first heard about it and how you first started getting interested in it, and so forth.
Yeah. So I would say that probably. I mean, there were a few things happening at the same time that got me interested in James Bond. I would say that really it started with my dad, my father. So my dad, he was born in the early '60s, so he grew up in the '60s and '70s. So he remembered watching James Bond and, similar shows like espionage shows like Mission Impossible on TV, probably reruns at that point. But he just suggested one day that, hey, why don't you rent a James Bond movie? And I believe it was Dr. No, which is, and I was like in third grade. So Dr. No is a great movie to watch now. I love it. But for a third grader, it's not very exciting. But I tried to give it a shot. I watched it with my dad. I probably fell asleep sometime, halfway through the movie, because they're one thing about the Bond films is they're all long. None of them are really short. So it was hard for my third grade brain to wrap around. And then we, a few years later, I get a Nintendo 64 and I get Goldeneye on Nintendo 64. And I'm like, oh, I remember James Bond. My dad showed me James Bond. Played through the game like a lot of us did. And I found out, and I didn't know, that it was based on a movie. I thought it was just a video game about James Bond called Goldeneye, and I found out it was based on a movie. And I watched the movie, and I'm like, some of this stuff was in the game. And I was really, really into video games, really, really big Nintendo kid. So because this game was on Nintendo, this kind of piqued my interest. And pretty much for a few months, maybe even up to a few years, every time we would go to the video store, I would rent a new Bond movie. And I tried to watch them as close to chronological order, not really that it matters, as I could. And I just really started to like the movies. I started to like the idea and notion of spies. I'm like, hey, maybe I can even do this as a career one day, because James Bond's a pretty cool dude. He's out there, killing bad guys and, gets all the ladies. So it was a kind of an exciting movie for a, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old boy. But that's kind of how I got into them.
Well, pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. I was not that old. I was not that young when I first got into Bond. But for me, it started first. Just the name James Bond came up. The name came up. I think I was 8 or 9, and there was an animated series that was on early mornings, maybe on some Saturday mornings. It was called James Bond Jr. And I was just watching it. It was kind of like it kind of felt like a little bit of Captain Planet and a little bit of the same type of villain from the show Inspector Gadget. You never see his face, but you see his hand. He's stroking a white cat and stuff. And I remember my mother was this was early one morning. I was watching the show while getting ready for school, and my mother says, "Oh, I know James Bond." And I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm like, you don't watch cartoons. What are you talking about? And well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, like this? You watch this? She's like, no, James Bond. I'm like, I still don't know what I don't know what you're talking about. So apparently there was a movie with this character called James Bond. So a couple years go by, and my folks, both my parents, watch a lot of NBC. Sitcoms and specials galore. Late 90s was known for that. There was one for the 35th anniversary of the Bond franchise. At least I think it was. I don't remember, but I think it was 97. And they were showing clips of the Bond films throughout the years. Now, I remember shortly after my mother told me about Bond when she saw me watching James Bond Jr., there was this trailer for this movie called Goldeneye. Now, Goldeneye came out in 95. I think I was 10 at the time, 10 going on to 11. And there was a trailer, and my mother and my grandmother talked about it. I was like, oh, interesting. My mother and my grandmother both were interested in this action movie because I did not see my family like that. So, and then, of course, going back to the 35th anniversary, I saw clips from all the different movies, and then I became aware that James Bond was, multiple movies at once, with different actors. So I remember, the one that really stuck out to me the most was, the famous one where, Connery is strapped to a table and he's got a laser, slowly rotating its angle towards his crotch. I remember that. I was like, whoa, what is this? Then it kind of drew my interest, but I didn't see the movies until my dad actually rented it on VHS, and I think I was in 8th grade or 9th grade. So, and that's when I really started to watch Bond movies. So I watched Goldfinger was probably the first full Bond movie I've ever seen. And after that, if you don't recall the way the movies end, they all end saying James Bond will return in Thunderball. So I learned about Thunderball, but we didn't. The store, the video store that we went to did not have Thunderball. So I rented. So my dad said, "Oh, rent Dr. No. That's the first one." So I saw Dr. No, and I really liked it. And I watched all the other Connery movies, From Russia with Love. We only lived twice. My dad bought Thunderball because this video store didn't have it. So that was the first Bond I owned was Thunderball. And then we kept going. We saw all the Roger Moore movies. I did not know about Moonraker because Moonraker came out in between Spy Who Loved Me and For Your Eyes Only. Moonraker was not mentioned at the end of Spy Who Loved Me. It was actually saying Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. So I rented For Your Eyes Only, and I did not know about Moonraker until Wikipedia. I don't know if it was Wikipedia, but I think someone mentioned Moonraker, and then the video store did have it. So I didn't know about Moonraker. That was the last Bond movie I saw when I was in high school and stuff. And at that same time, N64 was, the N64 was at the end of its life. So I didn't have it there. So I was running out of games to play, and my brother borrowed Goldeneye from somebody, maybe a neighbor or something. And I just started playing the hell out of it. So just playing the
it was I think that a lot of us did what really got us strapped into James Bond was that game. I think for sure. I think that James Bond has always been a part of the, well, not always, but since the '60s has been a part of our collective pop culture conscious. But I think that that video game really launched it back into the forefront of Hollywood. It made it really exciting again. Um, just a question for you: were these James Bond Will Return? Was that something you think they had in the theaters, or do you think that was something that whoever put them on VHS added after?
Honestly, I don't know. I think maybe for the early ones, so like Dr. No did not have it. From Russia with Love, actually, I rented From Russia with Love, and it did not have it. Then the later VHS, it did have it or something. So saying Bond Will Return and Goldfinger, and then Goldfinger, I have no idea, to be honest. I thinking they might have added in the VHSs. So
well,
they came out really close together. Like the first 4 Bond films came out 62 through 65.
Yeah, and then they took 2 years for You Only Live Twice, 2 years for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, 2 years for more years for Diamonds Are Forever, and then Live and Let Die was 2 years, and then it seemed that with Roger Moore they became about 2 or 3 years between each movie. And I was kind of looking at the legacy the other day when you said you wanted to do this movie. I was just kind of curious, like, who played Bond the longest? And the answer to that question is really Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig has been James Bond longer than any other actor to play James Bond, but he hasn't done as many movies as.
Yeah, there's been a bigger gap. There's been a bigger gap. Like this movie, No Time to Die. I mean, it's hard to believe, but Spectre came out 6 years ago.
Yeah, it is. So I guess one question: who's your favorite James Bond?
Oh, that's a no-brainer. Sean Connery.
I think Sean Connery's a classic. I like them all. I think that all of them bring a different flavor to kind of each movie.
I agree.
I would say that if I'm really going to say like which Bond is for me, and this isn't the same for everybody, but the Bond for me that's the most forgettable is going to be Timothy Dalton. I don't think he did a bad job. He's more forgettable.
They actually wanted Timothy Dalton was Timothy Dalton was one of the finalists for Bond after Connery, but the reason why they picked Roger Moore over Dalton was because Dalton was too young. He was only like in his 20s in like the early 70s. So
I know those Roger Moore movies kind of get a bad rap. And look, I'm like the evil lord with the
Blofeld.
Yeah, with the cat. Scratch my eye and shave my head. So I would say that though, like, and again, rose tinted glasses. I haven't watched these movies in a long time. And it's kind of weird that I'm nostalgic for movies that occurred in the late 70s and early 80s. But like Roger Moore, for some reason, is like his movie, the old movies that I remember the most are from Roger Moore. And those movies are crazy. I mean,
yes, they are.
They're nuts. They're not grounded in reality. Like Moonraker. I mean,
oh my gosh, that was trying to cash out on Star Wars because that was right. This was like 2 years. 1979 was the year of cash grabbing Star Wars.
But I like when I was a kid, and again, I haven't watched it in decades at this point, or a decade and a half. But when I was a kid, I loved Moonraker. I thought
Moonraker, Hugo Drax, take care of Mr.
Drax.
Bond. see to it that some harm comes to him. Yeah.
I just loved Jaws. I mean, I thought
Yeah.
in the colorful cast of characters with James Bond almost made it feel like a superhero show, like a
It
superhero
did. The
movie.
way he like got away from, the way he dodged bullets and the way he, was always on top of things. I mean, I wouldn't say he's a superhero. He's more like Batman. So like,
No, that and that's
yeah, that
kind of what
type
I mean. Yeah, and not so much James Bond, but just like Odd
of
Job
the
and
villains. Oh,
yeah, the
excuse
man
me.
with the golden gun, and
Odd Job.
and
Oh my gosh.
all these colorful cast of characters. It's like you're watching like a Simpsons episode. It's not just like every person, every bad guy has a theme. It's they're over the top, and I think those Roger Moore movies were definitely over the top.
Remember the segment? Remember the segment where they're chasing Christopher Lee and Man with the Golden Gun, and they somehow lose him. He's on one side of the river and they're on the other. And what's funny is the sheriff guy from Live and Let Die is in the car with them, and he sees like a little angled runway or stuff. And he's like, "You ever hear of Evel Knievel?" And then they do this crazy stunt where they go like the car just like does like a somersault and lands perfectly across the river.
Yeah,
that was ridiculous. Sorry.
No, I agree. I feel like those movies were, I mean, they're kind of like a blend of like a lot of adult themes, but they still have that 1960s, 70s blockbuster kind of feel, because this was before the blockbuster, right? It was before Star Wars, and it was before, Indiana Jones and guys like Spielberg. Yeah. And I think that, they were still kind of over the top, and it'd be, filmmaking, and I know you've discussed this before multiple times, but filmmaking is just so different. You were talking about like TV too, like TV specials. Like network television is nothing like it used to be. I mean, like the Halloween special, people looking forward to seeing something. And I wonder what it was like in the 60s and 70s with these James Bond movies. Did they get a lot of hype? Or were they kind of movies that over time kind of gained this cult status? I mean, and they had to have made money because they were just always perpetually making these movies over and over and over again.
Oh yeah, I mean, Connery, like the reason why Connery wanted to leave Bond after 5 films was just the amount of work. It wasn't just filming; he had to do a lot of marketing work too. I mean, he had to go on tour. They had to, he had to make so many appearances. So yeah, they really did hype. They really did try to hype Bond as much as they could, and then they continue to be successful and successful and successful, movie after movie after movie. I mean,
yeah,
geez, we're at 25 now. So,
yeah, which is, it's crazy. I mean, I think, the first, Sean Connery, my favorite Sean Connery movies are probably, I really like You Only Live Twice. And again, that's really tied to nostalgia, but I love Goldfinger as well. I mean, I love them all. Diamonds Are Forever. I even like that one.
Diamonds Are Forever. That one is hilarious.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Especially the ending, especially the way they ended it. He literally blows up that assassin dude. Just grabs him and then like, I forget how it goes accidentally, but he throws the guy from his nuts and flips him off the boat and just blows up with the bomb that was in the cake or something. They were It was a cartoon. They were cartoon villains, and it was awesome.
Well, and that's kind of the thing. There's all these weird little tidbits about all the characters. Like Francisco Scaramanga, Christopher Lee. Remember, he's like the third nipple.
Yeah, I'm like, what was the like? What's the point of that? Just to make him look menacing? Because that doesn't make him look menacing.
Yeah, it was just like so bizarre. Like, why are they referencing that? But again, that is like a movie. The Man with the Golden Gun is like a movie that sticks with me. I mean, like in like this magical island with this little person running around. It just they're fantastical, but they're set in reality, and that's why it kind of reminds me of, as you kind of mentioned as well, like kind of like Batman. These colorful villains, and just completely bizarre, and it's really hard to really put in context and explain without seeing the movies.
Yeah, I mean, they're, like you said, they're colorful. I mean, but there's some grounding in reality that just makes it work. Like, I love the Rogues Gallery of Batman. Like, that's the reason why I like Batman. And I mean, doesn't Marvel have a decent Rogues Gallery too that they just don't really use that much, or they just can't really get to work at all? But same thing with the Bond villains, like your freaking Oddjob,
Mm-hmm.
Sean Connery literally throws a golden brick and it just bounces off of him. Like, yeah, like a gold brick's going to bounce off of him.
Well,
but as the audience, based on what we've seen earlier in the films, we can believe that because Oddjob is crazy, and Oddjob is, he is that bad.
And he's a
wrestler in real life.
Yeah, and it kind of this, I dare say, like racist interpretation of a Asian man whose name is Oddjob. But what's that guy's name? Harold Cicada? Was that?
Yeah, Harold Cicada.
Yeah,
he was literally a commercial with him. Like, a bunch of kids are running up to him, and he's basically just like using his feet to, like, hit boards in half and stuff with his martial arts. So he knew how to fight. He knew how to wrestle. He knew how to fight. So
Harold Cicada was he was Japanese, or I
think he was Korean.
Yeah, Cicada just sounds Japanese. No, I think you're right. He definitely looks Korean. But I think he was American. He was Hawaiian, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
But he was I know he had some problems, I believe, with alcoholism, and he died from liver cancer.
Yeah, he only lived to be, I think he only lived to be like 50, or no, he lived to be 60. So yeah, he's from Hawaii, and he's Japanese. He's Japanese descent. So okay, so I was wrong.
I think Oddjob, the character, is Korean, but I think that the actor Harold Cicada is Japanese.
Yeah, Cicada's a very Japanese name. So yeah, but yeah, going back to so Roger Moore kind of feels a little more on the how do you say it? Crazy. I mean, Sean Connery was crazy too, but Roger Moore was even more ridiculous and stuff. What's your thoughts on Brosnan time?
Yeah, I feel like those movies are, and I guess I should also say is that they are kind of timepieces, right? They feel the time the movie was made feels very much, it's very much represented in the film. So like, the Connery movies, I mean, they're in the 60s. They take place in the 60s. They feel like 1960s movies. The Roger Moore movies, most of them late 70s, early 80s, they feel like they were made at that time. And I think the Pierce Brosnan movies feel like the late 90s. And I would say that the only one that I really, really remember is Goldeneye. And I really do like Goldeneye. quite a bit. But I feel like some of the other movies like Tomorrow Never Dies, I remember liking, but like The World Is Not Enough, Die Another Day, those to me are largely kind of forgettable.
Yeah, World Is Not Enough. I barely remember. The only thing I remember about World Is Not Enough was there's a submarine. The villain, the Robert Carlyle plays the villain, who has no sense of like feel. So if he punches,
he has no pain. Yeah,
he has no
again,
pain.
A very Batman-esque villain.
Yeah, and I just remember he kills. So there's Denise Richards is the main Bond girl, and her name is literally Christmas Jones, Dr. Christmas Jones. And there was another girl. There was another Bond girl, but she was like a villain. She was a villainess. And all I remember is that Bond literally shoots her. She's like she's unarmed, and Bond Pierce Brosnan just shoots her. Just shoots her in a cold way, just like It's like, tell me the thing. He's like, no, and then he just shoots her. So I remembered that. So,
and I mean, he was only in 4 Bond movies, right?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what happened. I was really disappointed that he was no longer going to be Bond after Die Another Day. I'll be honest. I know Die Another Day. People don't really care for it. It's super out there. It's probably the most out there. It was just all like set piece after set piece, gadget after gadget. What cool Bond tech will we see next and stuff? And of course, you have Halle Berry in the movie. But I still really enjoyed it. It was I thought the villains were great. It was in the movie. In that movie, I think it was a North Korean villain or something, because of the whole Kim Jong-il thing was still big in the early 2000s. So
I do think Pierce Brosnan was a good James Bond. I think that, I mean, he looked the part, and for when I was a kid, for sure, like when I thought of James Bond, I thought of Pierce Brosnan. And like when I saw I'm like, whoa, that's the guy from, Mrs. Doubtfire. And then after that,
yeah, same here.
And then after that, I'm like, whenever I saw him, and still when I see him today, I'm like, oh, that's, James Bond. And so I think he did a good job as James Bond, but I almost feel like, and I think Roger Moore kind of suffered from this a little bit as well. I mean, take suffer with a grain of salt, but I feel like the cold James Bond, the more stoic, less emotional James Bond, in my opinion, is a stronger kind of representation of what I feel James Bond would be like. So, where do I place him on my list of the best James Bonds? Probably not at the top, but I enjoyed the movies for sure.
Yeah. Same here. I mean, I saw. I mean, the first Bond movie I saw in the theaters was The World Is Not Enough, because that's came out when I was in 8th grade, and 8th grade was the time where I really started getting interested in the Bond movies and stuff. So I saw that, and I saw Die Another Day. What's weird was I was in college. I was in my third, or I think I was in my second. I think I was in my 3rd or 4th year at UIC. And I was not paying attention to movies coming out. I had no idea they made another Bond movie called Casino Royale, and it was going to be a new Bond, which I was still disappointed that Brosnan did not come back. And they have this guy Daniel Craig. I'm like, he doesn't look like I literally thought he doesn't look like Bond. And then I watched the movie. I'm like, he doesn't even act like Bond. And did not come back. So, yeah, it was very. I saw that, but then I saw the movie, and it was just like, I loved I mean, there was that crazy set piece where he's running after that parkour dude, and then he chases him all the way to that one embassy. I forget which, some African embassy or something, or Caribbean embassy. I don't remember. And I just remember all the bad stuff that happens in the movie. Bond gets tortured in the balls, and then at the end he basically calls Mr. White and shoots him, and he's like, "I'm Bond, James Bond." And I forgot that was that was probably the best ending of a Bond movie I think I've ever seen. And a lot of people think Casino Royale's their top favorite, and can I blame them? Not really. No, it's a really solid movie.
Yeah,
is it my top 10? Maybe.
Yeah,
I'm thinking that's as I'm right now. So
I really was, to be honest, I know this is kind of a controversial opinion, especially kind of talking with you, because I know, like, you and I, we sometimes disagree on things. I know that you are
we disagree on a lot of things.
you're definitely a purist when it comes to like films, and I'm more like, if it makes me happy, I like it. But I would say that actually Daniel Craig is my favorite representation of James Bond. And depending on the day, I might, depending on what movie I saw last, I might replace that with Sean Connery. But like when I think of James Bond or Daniel Craig's, or the filmmakers rather, representation of James Bond, like this cold guy with, a messed up past and a messed up childhood, who literally murders and kills thousands of people. I don't think he would be a, happy-go-lucky, silly guy. I think he'd be a little more cold, a little more brooding, if you will. But
yeah, here's I think all the Bonds have had that. I mean, it's still in it. I mean, it's not nearly as much, but I think a lot of the times, especially in the early Bond stuff, prior to Daniel Craig, I think those Bonds are just as easily cold and stuff. They just hide it better. Whereas Daniel Craig cannot hide it. He's just freaking, he's a killer. So
yeah,
because like in being a spy, secret agent, you have to know how to be deceptive and stuff. So pretending to be lavish and pretending to have a good time is I think that's basically what the other Bonds are. And now the reason why they're so good at pretending that the audience, we believe them, but the thing is they're deceiving. I mean, it's the art of deception.
Yeah, they're actors. Yeah,
exactly. So,
and I think that they're definitely trying to convey that they're not some sort of serial killer hired by the Queen to kill bad guys and Russians and terrorists and supervillains around the world.
I mean, there were tense times where Connery was like, it was in From Russia with Love, where he's questioning the woman and he starts smacking her, trying to get her to answer. He's like, liar. Like that. And I was like, woo. And then there was what was it? There was a lot of cold moments. Goldfinger, I don't think had any of it. Goldfinger did not have any of those, but even Roger Moore, there was he's like, if you don't like in Live and Let Die, Mrs. Bond, one of Mr. Big or Dr. Kananga, the Yaphet his villain, one of his agents is pretending to she was like a fake. Some of the movies have like a fake, or not a fake, but a false Bond girl. So they introduce this character, and then you find out she's bad, and then usually the villains will kill her, or Bond will kill her. But in Live and Let Die, Mrs. Bond just appears in his bed. He's like, "Oh, Mrs. Bond, I presume," and then like after fooling around with her, he's like, if you don't kill them, if you don't kill them, then I will. And like he forced this woman to have to choose between him and the villains. But it was there's quite a few cold moments, even from Roger Moore. Something similar, and I think even something similar in Man with the Golden Gun with Maud Adams, another false Bond girl. So.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed those.
No, I mean, I definitely have. But just like when I picture the essence of what all these different actors are bringing to the screen, I definitely think of Daniel Craig as being the most brooding of them all. But I do think that there's sometimes you can argue things are lost when they take such a kind of dark, serious tone.
Yes.
And not all of Daniel Craig's movies were, in my opinion, fantastic. You know, the one I really do not like. Well, and shouldn't say that I dislike it, but like Quantum of Solace just feels like such a step away from like this overall narrative that is kind of in Casino Royale and Skyfall and Spectre that hopefully is concluded in No Time to Die. But like I was saying, I do like all the interpretations, and you know, there's even more James Bonds that were in film and you know, video media other than, you know, Sean Connery and Roger Moore and Dalton and Brosnan and Daniel Craig. But those are the ones that kind of, when I think of James Bond, those are the ones I think of.
Yeah, of course. Daniel Craig for me is like, you know, I mean, I find the movies entertaining. I mean, I liked Casino Royale. I liked Quantum of Solace was hard on the eyes with the way just the awful editing was just really hard on the eyes. So like I remember seeing it. Remember when we went on a trip and we saw it? Remember I think I actually saw Quantum of Solace with you when it came out. So,
yeah, you did.
And we're watching it and I'm like, I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what was going on half the time.
It was a very convoluted plot.
Yes. And then, I mean, it's basically, I didn't even realize, like, you know, they were holding that one guy, Mr. White, that they captured at the end of, you know, Casino Royale. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even realize it, but yeah, I didn't realize he got away. It was just like all these super quick editing, all these super quick shots, you know, all these fighting and all the fight shots, all the shootouts and everything was just so freaking quick. I just couldn't process everything. So, and I agree. It was a mess of a movie. Skyfall. All right, sorry. Go ahead. I'll let you.
I was going to say Skyfall. I actually loved. I liked Skyfall.
I liked Skyfall because they made the villain kind of sympathetic and yet not at the same time. Like they kind of dabbled a little bit. So you don't want to make a villain too sympathetic. You know, you want part of the entertainment, and this is my opinion. Part of the entertainment is it's fun to love to hate a villain or love to, you know, hate a villain to the point where you want to root, you know, you get invested in the hero and stuff. So in this case, I mean, it was basically, he was always one step ahead. Javier Bardem's villain, I forget his name, was basically always like 2 steps ahead of everybody else. And he didn't want revenge on Bond, which is the thing. He wanted revenge on M.
Yeah, well, and he got it.
And he got it. Like,
yeah, Raul Silva, I think was his name.
Okay,
yeah.
Raul Silva.
Yeah, looking it up right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and this came out in 2012, I believe. So I can't say Game of.
Remember the world was supposed to end?
Yeah, that's right.
2012. We were supposed to be all dead.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's 2030. Now it's 2030, I think. But what was I going to say? So Game of Thrones came out in 2011, and I thought killing M was very ballsy because that's something that was never ever done before and stuff.
Wow.
So, and I was thinking about it.
Like 100 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm surprised. Like it kind of confuses me. So is Daniel Craig supposed to be the same Bond as Pierce Brosnan? Because the one thing that connects them is Judi Dench's M.
I don't think so, but yeah, I mean, Judi Dench's M in both of those. I don't think so because, I mean, feasibly it's possible, but I feel like there's just such a strong connective narrative between all the Daniel Craig movies, and that's why I kind of like the Daniel Craig movies, because there is this, like, you know, this Bond Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4 feel where all the other Bond movies to a certain extent, feel like a monster of the week type of movie, that you don't have to see the one before it to enjoy it.
Villain of the week. Yeah, I definitely can. Yeah, it's there's a set formula for Bond films that's been successful for so many years. Um, for me, I mean, just there's one thing of continuity of the earlier films that kind of I'll be honest, I always thought the Bond actors were, or the different Bond actors were different James Bonds, so they weren't the same character. But then there's On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where it's supposed to be the second. There's a little trilogy of movies. There's You Only Live Twice. It starts with You Only Live Twice. I call it the Blofeld trilogy. You Only Live Twice, then On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and then Diamonds Are Forever. So we all know in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Connery was not Bond in that one. It was George Lazenby instead.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen that movie. You know what happens at the end, right? Bond gets married, and
Yes.
Why does Bond not generally get married usually? Because he has multiple enemies everywhere, and
they'll kill his family.
And they'll kill his family and stuff. And he learned that the hard way. So that's how On Her Majesty's Secret Service ends. And then Diamonds Are Forever. You see Connery come back, and he's trying to look for Blofeld to exact revenge. And then you see later in For Your Eyes Only with Roger Moore, he visits the grave of the character from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I think her name's Tracy Bond. And then Blofeld comes back, and they have a little fight in that little cold opening before the For Your Eyes Only song and credits come on. So after seeing that, it just made me think, well, maybe this is the same character.
Well, I think it is, but I don't think that. I would agree with that Blofeld trilogy. I think that those movies definitely are, really closely connected, even though if I'm correct, don't we have like a different actor playing Blofeld in every single movie?
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes he has hair, sometimes he has
Donald Pleasance, whose face I've seen quite a bit in the last 24 hours trying to finish my Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Donald, so that's the only other movie. That and Great Escape are the only other movies I know, other than the Halloween series, that I know Donald Pleasance was in. I'm sure he was in a lot of other movies and stuff, but Halloween and You Only Live Twice and Great Escape are like his best known works and stuff. So, and then Donald Pleasance plays him in You Only Live Twice. I think he's the best of the Blofelds. He has the scar, he has the cat, and he looks the most menacing. Even though he doesn't look like he could fight Sean Connery, he still has that menacing look. Maybe because of the scar and stuff, and the way he sounds. And stuff.
Oh, and what did you see first, Austin Powers or Donald Pleasance as
Austin Powers?
Yeah, I'm like,
Doctor Evil. I saw Dr. Evil first. I'm like, wait, that's Dr. Evil with the scar and the cat and the outfit, the same outfit too.
Yeah, that Kim Jong Il outfit.
Yes, exactly. I mean, in that movie, and You Only Live Twice, they're in Japan. So,
you know what he's in as well? He's in Escape from New York.
Yeah, that's right. Because he became one of John Carpenter's. After Halloween, he became one of John Carpenter's go-to actors. He was also in Prince of Darkness, and I don't know what other than Escape from New York and Prince of Darkness. I don't know what else he was in with John Carpenter. He wasn't in The Fog, and I know he wasn't in Christine. Who knows? But so in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Blofeld's played by Telly Savalas. If you don't know who Telly Savalas is, he was in a lot of war movies. He was in Kelly's Heroes with Clint Eastwood. He had his own show called Kojak, which was one of my father's favorite shows when he was a kid. And I think he was also in The Dirty Dozen. He plays a crazy guy in The Dirty Dozen. And I think the reason why they hired Telly Savalas is because he's a big guy. He's like he's more he's a broader shoulders. He's more muscular and he's bald. He's
more intimidating. Yeah,
he's more intimidating. He was more intimidating. So if they wanted, because in Our Majesty's Secret Service, he actually gets in a fight with Bond on the what do you call it, the bobsled? They're on the bobsled fighting, and you need someone that can physically fight with or match George Lazenby, because George Lazenby is like he's just like really jacked and ripped and stuff. So you want someone that can match that. You want a villain that can match that. Is more, as you said, more menacing, more intimidating.
And Telly Savalas was one big Greek scary dude.
Exactly. And he gets away. Like the fight ends with him being the bobsled's going, and Bond kicks him up, and he gets caught in like a couple of trees or something. Like his neck gets caught in a couple of trees. So you see Blofeld at the end with a neck brace on because he got injured and stuff, with the bobsled still going. And then of course they shoot Bond's wife. So and then Diamonds Are Forever starts, and then you see Blofeld done by a different actor.
And now he has hair, right?
Yeah, he has hair. He clones himself like Palpatine with the mud. I think he clones with mud or something.
Yeah.
And they hire people to basically they're lookalikes, or like some powerful people have they don't they have doubles or something,
Mm-hmm.
in case they're people follow them and stuff. Well, I guess he got a bunch of people to double as him or something like that, and they used mud and stupid stuff like that. And but it's the same actor that was in You Only Live Twice. He was the one guy, like he's just like he's talking to Bond, and then he just stops talking, and his eyes don't move, and he's like, oh, there's a knife in his back, like a little Hitchcock reference right there. Like he just stops talking like that.
Yeah, and I actually love that one.
Yeah, and then Bond chases,
and I think that I saw that was one of the first Bond movies that I saw from beginning to end. So it sticks with me, I guess, a lot. But that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting seeing we got to see like the Japanese Secret Service, and they had like their little secret little base and stuff. It was like the Batcave. It was like the freaking Batcave. And
it was surprisingly violent. And I remember that, like, I never really thought of movies in the 60s and 70s as ever being violent, but how they kill James Bond, like I'm like, holy cow!
With the bed, the bed goes up,
and the machine gun,
yeah,
like whoa. But
yeah, and then they drop him in the submarine, and he wakes up. He's like, oh, you only live twice, Mr. Bond. Yeah. So that was crazy. And then you see every movie, I don't know about the later ones, but the early ones, like you always see Blofeld as an interesting way of executing people that fail him. So like in From Russia with Love, he has the chess master is basically as a result of his plan, Robert Shaw's character Grant gets killed on a train, because he was supposed to kill Bond and take the Russian decoding device, and basically because of that, you had number 3, who was Rosa Klebb, and you had number 5, who was Kronstein. Kronstein was the chess master, and they're both blaming each other for the failure. And Blofeld, you don't see his face, but you see him pen the case, like saying, one of you guys, one person's going to have to go. And then a guy comes in, and he has the little dagger come out of his shoe, and the dagger's filled with venom and stuff, and kills the chess guy, and it just kills him like that. He's like, we need to have a faster working venom. Yeah, so you had that, and then Thunderball, you see Blofeld again. He's in like a little booth, a little parlor. Once again, you still don't see his face. He has like a little business meeting with all the heads of all the different heads, giving reports, old business and stuff. And he just pushes a button, and the chair just electrifies, fries the dude that's in it, and then the chair goes into the ground to take the body away. So I'm like, wow, that's a nice little system to have. If you need to execute somebody one day, just have that little automated system go down.
again, it's like Austin Powers.
Yes.
They're evil. I mean, that's kind of like where my mind goes when I see those movies. Like, it's a parody film, but it's not that much of a parody with them dropping down and being burnt in magma or lava, living the secret base in a volcano, and
You remember Blofeld's execution and You Only Live Twice? And it's got to be it's got to be the most ridiculous of them all.
I don't remember it.
The pond full of piranhas.
Yes.
He pushes the lever, the little pedal with his foot, and the bridge when they're walking across the bridge goes down. The woman goes into the water, and just the piranhas just freaking eat her.
Just like
that's what you want to do. If you want to be a supervillain, you have to have an elaborate thing to execute people with, and no matter the cost, and no matter the lack of the lack of practicality, you have to have that. So that's part of the reason why I like these films. They're just so crazy. They're so over the top, and the villains were threatening and menacing. And what's awesome was the heroes were very good. So it was always a treat to see how they would come together, how Bond would come together or fight or take on the villain, because the villains were always larger than life, and Bond himself was larger than life too.
How did you feel about Christoph Waltz playing Blofeld? How do you think he did?
Blofeld? I thought he it's like with Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness. Mm-hmm. When they casted him and they revealed the name of his character, it was a different name.
Yeah.
So like in Into Darkness, you have what's his name, John Harrison. Benedict Cumberbatch plays John Harrison, and then you find out he's Khan. I'm like, he's not Khan. He could be one of Khan's people, but he's not Khan, in my opinion. Now going back to Christoph Waltz's Blofeld, well, he's Franz Oberhauser. I think that's his name, Franz Oberhauser. And not only is he Franz Oberhauser, he is Bond's adoptive brother.
Yeah,
he is Bond's adoptive brother. And I'm going to go back to Star Wars. I like them making Leia Luke's sister, twin sister, on top of that, which I know I'm probably the only person in the world that feels this way, but I don't buy that they're brother and sister. That's just me. I mean, they could both be really good friends. They could both be fellow Force users. Maybe maybe even half siblings, but not twins. Not twin siblings. That's ridiculous.
Well, they definitely are.
In my opinion. But it's the same thing. It was ridiculous. I'm like, I mean, they wanted to give like a person. They wanted to up the personal stakes.
Well, they also want to tell this narrative about James Bond over time, and kind of hopefully, I mean, and I think it's kind of obvious that James Bond likely is going to die at the end of the next movie. At least I'm hoping, or that there is some sort of big closure.
If you guys know spoilers, don't talk spoilers and stuff in the chat or anything, because we haven't seen the movie yet. So I do know what happens, but I won't say anything. So the reason why I'm having this stream in the first place is to kind of cope with that.
Oh yeah, I mean, Mr. Lewandowski looks up every end to every movie before seeing it. But I mean, I haven't seen it, but from the trailers, I'm like, whoa, this is what it feels like. I just hope that there is some sort of end to it all. I just want there to be closure. I don't want us to be kind of being tagged along, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, of course. So now that we're about close to an hour in, I was wondering if you wanted to talk your top. We'll start with top. We can start with top Bonds. Now you said Daniel Craig is your favorite Bond. So where would you rank the other Bonds?
It's really hard. Again, like I said, some days Daniel Craig is number one. Some days, Sean Connery's number one. But I would say right now at this particular moment, it would be Daniel Craig 1, Sean Connery 2, Roger Moore 3, Pierce Brosnan 4, and then Timothy Dalton number 5. And of the main Bonds, I know people say, well, there are other people portrayed Bonds. That's what I'm saying.
Like George Lazenby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. So for me, my number one is Sean Connery. I've not made that a secret at all. Number 2 probably would be Pierce Brosnan. I really like Pierce Brosnan a lot. Number 3 would probably be Roger Moore. Once again, Roger Moore, solid actor, played Bond. Number 4 would probably be Daniel Craig, because even though Daniel Craig's very different from all the other Bonds, he's nowhere near as fun as the other Bonds. But I mean, there's still a bit of believability in him, even though his fights are still kind of unrealistic. There's still a little bit more believability in Daniel Craig. And then of course number 5 or 6, Timothy Dalton and George Lazenby. Like George Lazenby is he's barely memorable as Bond. I mean, he has the look, and he does have the look and stuff, but he doesn't he wasn't really, to me, he wasn't as memorable. I mean, there was actually, I take that back. There was a memorable part where he says, we have all the time in the world at the end of Iron Majesty's Secret Service was a very wonderful little moment, wonderful little bit of acting from him. So, if you guys like George Lazenby, this is just my opinion. I don't think he's a bad Bond. I just don't really remember his performance as well as like the others and stuff.
Yeah,
and the same with Timothy Dalton too. So
me neither.
I agree with you on Timothy Dalton. Before we go on further, I have not said hello to the chat. So let's see who's on. Let's see who's in the house. So we have, I guess going back an hour, we have super fan Adam Shauhan. What's up? How you doing? Thanks for coming on. And then we have Hunted Knight. Hunted Knight has come on my channel quite a bit. And then we have Eddie Gannon from Ireland. What's up? How are you? Jake D, my master of marketing and chief shenanigan maker. And then Pacific 414, fellow Star Trek fan, fellow YouTube creator. If you have not subscribed to Pacific 414, you should. Let's get him to 100 subs. I'll say this every time until he gets there. Let's see. We have the Padawannabe. He is a big Legos guy, and he's a big Star Wars guy, and he's part of the Echo-based network community. So check him out. Punk Waddle, my other mod, and he's an awesome guy. I'm waiting for him to start a channel, and he's big on guitars and penguins. So I can't wait. And who else do we have? We have Sadukar. What's up, Sadukar? He's my resident Scot. So welcome. And we have a Mr. Perazzo in the house. I've never seen a Mr. Thomas Perazzo in the chat before. So welcome. If you have not met Mr. Thomas Perazzo, you have not truly lived. I'll tell you that. So welcome. Thanks for coming by. And then do we have anybody else? We have Zax says, hey guys, how are you, Zax? Thanks for coming in. We have Matt Cave. He's another YouTuber. Subscribe to him. He does very similar videos to myself, and he does gaming streams to myself. He's doing the Resident Evil games right now, so check him out. We have TD, who's on like so many people's chats. He says, hey everyone, thanks for being here. And we have K2J Extreme. He's a game streamer, and if you want to watch, he does some really great streams, so check him out. And we have Man of War, Neighbor of the Beast. He says, from Russia with Love, Robert Shaw was a great effing heavy. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And I'm going to get into From Russia with Love. So And I think that's it. I'm so behind in the chat. So then we have Master of the TDS. Welcome. I met you in Las Vegas. Great guy. Check him out. Check his channel out. And I think that's it. If I missed you, I apologize. But let's go back. So what are we talking about? We're talking about best Bonds and stuff. Okay,
Yeah, we're talking about James Bond.
James Bond. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So okay, so we talked about who our favorite Bonds were now. So let's go. Let's take this a little step further. Favorite Bond villains. And there were so many awesome ones.
My favorite, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to pick my favorite villains, or like I kind of prefer the henchmen. So I really like Oddjob. I really like Jaws. You know, the henchmen, I feel like were the most colorful cast of characters. But in terms of like the best the best villains, I would say that like Blofeld, you have to include Blofeld in there. And actually, I would probably put him at the top. Dr. No, too, is a very rememberable one for me. And again, probably another controversial opinion, but Javier Bardem, Raul Silva.
Yes, I agree.
I think he's an awesome, awesome character. Yes, sympathetic to a point. But it's, you know, he has this believable revenge story arc, and that his anger feels real. Where you have like Blofeld, especially from like the 60s and 70s, it's just like
it's all about
what's his motive? Power.
Yeah, it's about power, extortion, you name it, revenge. Same thing.
So I would say those are my favorite.
Okay. I really, I agree with you on the henchmen. I mean, obviously, Oddjob and Jaws were both in the Goldeneye game as in the multiplayer. I'm sure that has nothing to do with it.
But a lot to do with it.
Yes. I agree. I agree with those two are especially because they're like Oddjob is killable until Oddjob is unkillable until Bond fries him with the hat and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jaws is just unkillable. Like every time like Jaws gets thrown into a death, like a situation where death would be certain. Not for him, no. Gets thrown off the train, just gets up. Gets thrown off the train, gets up. Gets thrown into shark-infested waters. Like kills the shark. He wrestles the shark and kills it.
Well, and he becomes a good guy at the end.
And then he becomes a good guy at the end. Because you know why? Because Drax in space wanted to change humanity to be more pure and superior, and Bond's like, thankfully he's like, you know what, and without flaws, and Bond's like, you're gonna go for this, Jaws? You have flaws too. You're not part of this thing, and then Jaws just turns. Jaws just turns on them. And I was like, what? I'm like, what is this?
And he gets a girlfriend.
He gets a girl. It was not meant to be taken. Obviously, it was not meant to be taken seriously. It was all meant to be.
I love both. That's a great introduction to old James Bond for children, for sure.
Yes. It was the Moonraker. Holy crap! And I want to rewatch it now. But yeah, so obviously for me, the henchman. I mean, freaking Oddjob with the hat and throwing. I mean, Bond throws the gold brick and it just bounces off of his chest. And no matter what happens, like nobody can stop this guy, and even Bond himself cannot stop him. Like Bond is getting his butt kicked until the very, very end. Until the very, very end of the fight, tries to take him on. He needs to use his wit. He needs to use his brains to be able to beat Oddjob. He can't just fight him like other characters. So, but yeah, that, and then Goldfinger. I mean, I really liked Goldfinger. Like they really built up Goldfinger to be this really bad villain, and then the first thing you see is like Bond getting the drop on him, because he's cheating in gin rummy or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, because he has freaking Oddjob, and then he basically starts to become more and more and more menacing as the movie goes until he's at his highest, as peak with the segment with the laser, with him being strapped to the table and stuff. And Bond could not get out of that. The only way he could get out of it was once again using his wits, using his intellect to be able to talk himself out of it.
Well, how about
amazing?
The end of Goldfinger is great. How Goldfinger dies. That's another.
He gets sucked out of the plane. He gets sucked out of the plane. Yeah, I remember that. In the novel, it's Oddjob that gets sucked out of the plane.
Yeah,
Oddjob is actually on the plane in the novel. I've not read the novel. I've just only read Cliff Notes.
How about Baron Samedi from Live and Let Die?
Yeah, because like they kill him, and then I forget what happens to him. Like they knock him into a coffin of poisonous snakes, and we don't see him again. They take out the villain. They take out Kananga. They literally blow him up. He shoves like a little mini tank in his mouth, and he blows up like a balloon. And another movie where there's sharks. Another movie where there's a shark tank because villains have to have shark tanks. It wasn't even the first one. Thunderball had it first with Largo. So, and then Spy Who Loved Me had it shortly after that. So sharks were big thing for villains to use.
Maybe you could say the villains are themselves.
Yeah, going back to Baron Samedi. So at the end, there's another villain. There was another henchman. There was Mr. Claw. There's the one dude with the bald dude with the sunglasses, and he had the claw for a hand and stuff. And he was in the train with Bond, and then Bond fights him, fights him, throws him out the train, kills him. And at the very end, we see Baron Samedi sitting in the front of the train on top of the engine, just laughing at the audience.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yep. To be continued.
And then I think in Goldeneye, the video game, he was in the very, very final level, the 00 level. When you beat all the levels in 00, you unlock the pyramid level, and he was in the pyramid level, and he had to fight him like 3 or 4 times, and he was still alive after you fought him, after you completed that mission. So remember that one?
Yeah. No, I never got there. I mean, I've seen it on YouTube, but I definitely have not beaten all the levels in 00.
Okay, but so you actually get to fight like in single player mode. You get to fight Baron Samedi in the pyramid level, and then if you beat everything on the secret agent, which is the medium level difficulty, you unlock the Aztec temple.
Yeah,
and that one has Jaws. So you have the Moonraker laser in that, and then that has Jaws in it as well. So you get to fight Jaws.
Was Knick-Knack in the Goldeneye?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, he's another.
Like people complained about Oddjob being shorter than the other models and stuff. So can you imagine?
Oh yeah, it was Oddjob who's the short one. Yeah, Knick-Knack.
Yeah. Can you imagine fighting Knick-Knack? That'd be impossible. Knick-Knack would kill everybody because he just shoot everybody in the legs. Everybody would want to be Knick-Knack if you were playing multiplayer, in my opinion.
Probably.
But yeah, Blofeld. I like Goldfinger a lot. I like Blofeld because Blofeld's just like he was in like almost all the Connery movies except for Dr. No and Goldfinger. He was in. We first see him in From Russia with Love and Thunderball, but we never see his face. And then he has that little trilogy afterwards. So he was basically the main menace of the Connery era, the Spectre era. But I really liked Scaramanga, Christopher Lee, because Christopher Lee was created by, I'm going to say God. If you don't believe in God, I apologize, but he was created by God to play villains. I don't see him playing. I've never seen him in a role other than him playing villains. Have you? Every movie I've seen him in, he was a villain. Even in Gremlins 2, as Dr. I forget his name. He was a villain in that too.
Yeah, I really. Yeah, I mean Count Dracula.
Return from Witch Mountain. Obviously, Man with the Golden Gun.
I mean, he was in like hundreds of movies.
Yes, the Wicker Man. He was the villain in that too. I've never seen Wicker Man. Everybody says the movie sucks.
Yeah, it's weird. I watched it last year, actually.
On Netflix, probably, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's how I found out about it too. But yeah, oh, freaking and Saruman, and of course Count Dooku for all you Zoomers and younger millennials out there. So yeah, Christopher Lee was in a lot of stuff, and like he worked until he was like 90, until he died. So,
Yeah, I mean he
he was in
was
the Hobbit movies. He was 93. He was in the Hobbit movies.
he
So
definitely has an extensive career, that is for sure.
yeah, and he's a freaking legend in my book. So but yeah, loved Scaramanga. I really liked the villain from Spy Who Loved Me, Stromberg. He had that little he had the he was it was he had the battleship that basically captured all the submarines and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
And he
yeah,
had that little underwater. He wanted to create an underwater Atlantis. He wanted to create an underwater place under the sea and stuff. He had that little base, and that's where we first see Jaws and stuff, and the shark tank. So he had the elevator with he had the elevator. If you went into the elevator, the elevator, the door under the floor of the elevator would open, and you'd fall in like a slide into the shark tank. And
Well,
Of course, Bond saw past that right away.
he just seems like one of those, again, Roger Moore villains. Whether it's Draco or Drac or Stromberg, just a very gaudy, evil henchman. That's um, very what's the word I want to say? Like Dr. Evil-esque.
Yeah, like almost one dimensional.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think they did much with him. Like Bond just literally just executes him. Just like he has that little tube gun under the table, under his this nice little long dining table that he's sitting at when Bond confronts him. Tries to shoot him, Bond sees it, misses, and then Bond just points the gun in the tube and shoots him and kills him just like that. I was like, oh, that's kind of. I found it underwhelming. But then the rest of the movie was him trying to fight Jaws, so that kind of made up for it. So, but yeah, the Stromberg. Then you had freaking, of course, everyone. You might agree with me with this. Sean Bean as 006.
Well, yeah, and I love Goldeneye. I think that if I loved the other three Pierce Brosnan movies as much as I liked Goldeneye, he would be higher on my list. But I just, because they kept that kind of as a twist, for a significant portion of the movie. So just that initial kind of scene, which is very well represented, I think, in the video game. And you think he's dead, but he isn't.
Yeah, that's true. So and then of course Javier Bardem's Skyfall villain was pretty good in my opinion.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
I think even what's his name did a good job as Lashif in Casino Royale, even though he wasn't really the villain, he was just working for the villains, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the villains. So so basically, Javier Bardem, obviously Blofeld. My favorite Blofeld is Donald Pleasance's Blofeld.
Yeah, I would agree.
Goldfinger's very memorable. I liked Grant from Russia with Love, Robert Shaw's character. He was always like 2 steps ahead of Bond until, Bond. The only reason why Bond beat him was because he had that secret dagger. He had the Q's contraptions. So from Russia with Love, the first time we see Q. And if Bond did not have Q's contraptions, Grant would have gotten him and would have been able to complete Spectre's plan to deliver the Lecter to the Russians. So they have Bond steal the Lecter from the Russians, and then they basically calculate exactly what Bond's going to do, and then Grant will swoop in, kill him, make it look like an accident, and then acquire the Lecter, and then Spectre would be able to make money off of a situation they created.
Another continuity thing, Q Q was represented in a lot of Bond movies, Connery movies.
That's right.
Uh,
all the way till World Is Not Enough. That he was from Russia with Love to World Is Not Enough. Desmond Llewellyn.
Yeah.
His Q, he's a freaking once again, he's a freaking legend. I'm sure people in the audience we're always excited to see Q, see him do something, or always roll his eyes at Bond every time Bond destroys something or makes a joke, and always tells him to grow up and stuff.
Yeah,
but he was a staple. He was a staple in almost all the movies. The only movies he wasn't in from that time was Dr. No and Live and Let Die.
And I think that if he was immortal, he probably would have been in all the movies. But
absolutely,
people die, just like Desmond.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I think he was 80. I think he was in his mid 80s and stuff. He did World Is Not. He filmed World Is Not Enough. Like he died like a few weeks before the movie came out. So, like he was working. He literally worked till he died. So, he's a freaking legend. World War II veteran. I can go on forever about that, but I loved. So now that we're talking about Q, what's your favorite Q save moment? What devices devices that Q gave Bond that really stood out to you?
That's hard to really recall and think of. Why don't you go and I'll think about this a little more intently.
Okay. So the ones that I remember the most are the Sean Connery ones. So like I said earlier, and From Russia with Love, he gets into a fight with Robert Shaw's Grant on the train.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me. And Grant, we know, and they set this up from the beginning of the movie. Grant has this little garrote that he pulls out of his wrist, out of his cuff, and he's going to strangle Bond with. And Bond would not have gone out of that garrote if Bond didn't try to reach for the briefcase that Q gave him, or Q's real name is Major Boothroyd. And he has to I forget what button he had to press, but he had to press a button to get to basically have a dagger or a knife just kind of spring out. It was spring loaded, just spring out. He grabs it and he stabs him, and he's able to use the garrote on Grant, killing him. But even before that, the same briefcase was rigged to explode if you opened it the normal way with I forget exactly like opening basically unlocking the catchers normally would cause there's tear gas glued to the side of the inside of the briefcase. So if you open up normally, it would explode and stuff. So Q had to tell him exactly how to open it without it exploding. And so he had that briefcase and he had another briefcase. So, and he literally said, "I'll pay for it." He's like, "I want a last smoke." And Grant's like, "Not a chance. I'm not doing this." He's like, "Oh, I'll pay for it." And he's like, "What with? I took all your money." He's like, "Oh no, I have 50 gold sovereigns." And then because those were hidden in that same briefcase. So he just pretends he's going to open it really quickly to the point where Robert Shaw's like, "No, I'll open it." And then he opens it the normal way and it blows up in his face. And then that's how the fight starts. I thought that part of the movie was brilliant.
I remember few I like the ridiculous gadgets. I mean, I guess they all are ridiculous, but I remember, I forget what movie it was, but there was a cigarette rocket launcher in a movie.
I don't know, a cigar. Oh yeah, you only live twice. He has the cigarette, and when he smokes it, it kills someone. It literally kills someone. Now they say smoking will kill you. Well, smoking.
I remember also a perfume bottle that was a flamethrower. I think that was in Moonraker, if I remember correctly.
I don't remember those.
I mean, there's just so much.
But you remember Goldfinger, right? You remember what Q gives to Bond in Goldfinger, right? The car.
Oh yeah,
the Aston Martin. So the Aston Martin has a freaking has a bulletproof screen that will rise, when he pushes the right button in the back, so if he's being chased by bad guys and they shoot at him, the bullets won't pass the screen. And then you have like he has like an oil thing, like he can literally shoot oil to cause the cars to slip. It's like a freaking cartoon.
Mhm.
And then Sean Connery even literally says this to him in the movie. He's like, "There's an ejector seat. That red button, do not press it under any circumstances. That will eject the passenger seat." And he's like, "You're freaking joking." And then Q's famous line is like, "I never joke about my work, 007." So that, and then we see him actually do. We actually see him use it on the because he's being held hostage and he's supposed they're driving into the Goldfinger's compound and he uses it. It literally ejects the bad guy out of the car. It was ridiculous. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
But it was I mean, and then Thunderball, he had the breather. He had that little thing that he used to breathe and stuff. We see those in like the later movies. Like he keeps those as like trophies or something to remember his missions or something. I think in Honor Majesty's Secret Service. So.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
And then there was little Nellie in You Only Live Twice. That little helicopter. That little helicopter that had all these missiles that were able to kill. Like they were able to destroy 4 of Blofeld's choppers and stuff. Remember that?
Crazy stuff. And I think that I mean, I have Wikipedia open and there's a Wikipedia page dedicated to the list of Bond's gadgets, and there's 100 easily. I mean,
yes.
each movie has like 5 or 6.
Yes.
And I mean, like I'm reading through this and I don't even remember all of these things.
I'm trying to see if I can find it.
The Ghetto Blaster from Timothy Dalton, a boombox that can fire a rocket. Ghetto Blaster. That
is
strange way to refer to something. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different, so much different little, like you kind of mentioned the word cartoon and like over the top.
Yes,
it's grounded in reality, but kind of the same way like Batman would be grounded in reality.
Yes. So yeah, there's some level of disbelief that the viewer can attain, and that's what makes it. And that's what makes this work. That's why it's worked for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have another thing I wanted to ask. I have the Bond girls. Have any particular favorite Bond girls?
I mean, not really. I think that in terms of like the Bond girls, I'd like some of the more interesting characters. I think the later Bond girls were given more of a role than just, being, quote unquote eye candy or, exploited for, sexual reasons. But I like kind of the newer Bond girls, which are actually, working for MI6, working in the agency, and just, a female component of James Bond.
Well, you obviously have M. Well, he's not a Bond girl, obviously, but like going to MI6, you have M, and then you have Moneypenny.
Moneypenny, yeah.
And I'll be honest, all the scenes with Bond and Moneypenny, the original Moneypenny, were hilarious. Like it was just like you would watch it now and you'd be like, nope, they would never do this now. Too much harassment. It could be construed as harassment, probably in a sense.
Well, I mean,
even though both.
Go ahead.
Even though both parties are like they're just joking about it. Nowadays, if someone saw that, it'd be reported right away and stuff. So.
Well, dude, that's
seeing stuff like that,
slapping the woman. I mean, that did not age well at all.
No, you're talking about Goldfinger.
Yeah,
He's like Felix, say hello to Maria. Maria, say goodbye to Felix. And she's like, but James, no, man talk. And then he spanks her, and then she walks away. Yes. I've seen that movie with. In high school, I saw with different people, and it was hilarious to see people's reactions. Even in the late '90s, it was like nah, you can't do that. You can't really do that. You can't do stuff like that. That's the thing. It was so rooted in fantasy that things like this could get away. That it was just that entertaining. Is it right?
Well,
Thing to do?
and I
No.
mean, but I think that also, you know, when you look at the time that film was produced, it
Yeah, 60s.
also was something that, you know, unfortunately was more acceptable, and more tolerated, at least in film. I mean, something like that that would even like deem a movie to have like an R rating if you saw like that level of abuse these days.
Yes.
And you know, I would say that I kind of agree with that. The domestic violence stuff is not something that I think really adds to the experience. I think it kind of detracts from it. I mean, we're talking about it right now as it being ridiculous. So yeah, that is, again, that did not age very well whatsoever, and really didn't. The concept of the Bond girl didn't age really well either. And I think as time went on, the female actors who portrayed, you know, characters in the James Bond movies had become more, again, they more significant in terms of their characters, more interesting. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, so for me, I really liked the whole idea of. I mean, I liked the first two. I liked, Ursula Andress as Honey Rider and Doctor No. That famous segment, which I'm sure how many it was made fun of in Austin Powers right away, wasn't it? But the second movie, I think, where
yes,
she's walking she's walking on the beach with the bikini on.
hmm
She got the little dagger and stuff. But yeah, she basically, she was the. I'm gonna be a little politically incorrect. She was the dumb blonde in that movie. I mean, well, actually, no, that's not true. She was actually really intelligent, but she basically got them caught, or they were about to get caught and stuff because the way she sailed in. The fact that the radar was able to detect her and Bond at the same time. But no, her character was actually really intelligent according to the movie. Like, she didn't go to school; she just simply studied an encyclopedia. Um, that's where I remember this. But yeah, she was really great. From Russia with Love, Daniela Bianchi, who plays I don't remember her characters. I can't think of her character's name now. Tatiana. She plays Tatiana Romanova. So, yeah, and yeah, she's a clerk. She's a cipher clerk, and she works with the Lecter, that decoder that they're supposed to be trying to obtain in the movie. Um, and yeah, she comes off over the top too. She's like, while he's trying to talk business, with asking her questions, she's like, and she's like, when are we gonna make love next? And then freaking M and the rest of them are hearing this on the are hearing this live and stuff. It's ridiculous.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but Goldfinger really started the false Bond girl, the false Bond girl.
yeah,
So you're led to believe that this is the Bond girl, and then that Bond girl dies in Goldfinger. So in the beginning of the movie, the girl Jill,
yeah,
who is the one that's helping Goldfinger cheat, she basically gets painted gold. Like Odd Job comes in while James Bond is basically insulting the Beatles by saying, like, it's better to listen to where if you want, it's like warm champagne is like listening to the Beatles without earmuffs. And while he's saying that, Odd Job basically karate chops him and knocks him out. So obviously, based on that, and then of course after that, he finds Jill painted gold on the bed. So that's what happens when you say the Beatles stink. You're gonna get your girlfriend killed, and then you're gonna get knocked out by Odd Job. So, but yeah, and then so that happens, and then we meet her sister, who's trying to get revenge on Goldfinger in Switzerland. I think they're in Switzerland, or they're in Geneva. They're right by Geneva and stuff. They're in the mountains, and she gets killed by Odd Job's hat. So, and then we meet them. Bond gets captured. He goes through the laser thing, and then he wakes up on the plane and he sees another woman, and this woman says, "My name is Pussy Galore," and he's looking around. He's like, I must be dreaming. Because who the like that name? Just come on, like that's crazy. Like who would get away with that?
Yeah.
Pussy galore.
Yeah.
Wear that with a badge of honor. That says something. And then they get in their little fight. You know, she knows jujitsu and stuff, and or judo and stuff, and they get in that little fight. And I think recently they said, "Oh, Bond did something to her that rhymes with grape to her because she was trying to, do stuff in the barn and stuff."
Yeah. Well,
I think this came from the director of No Time to Die.
I think that's
I think that's exactly.
Again, you look at things that were maybe acceptable in the 60s that aren't today. And you can argue that is a somewhat true statement.
No, that's very true. It's very true. Things were different back then. People felt differently about things. So, but yeah, and then after that, it was more or less more of the same. Yeah, it said Thunderball had it started having femme fatales, some villainesses.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the villainesses. They like, especially Thunderball, the redhead. I forget her name. The Spectre agent. She was a really good villain. And then of course Bond dances with her. And then when they're trying to shoot him, he basically moves. He positions himself so that she takes the bullet instead of him. But if you think realistically, the bullet would have passed through both of them. I think.
Maybe depends probably on the caliber of the bullet.
Yeah, and how far away. So yeah. But yeah, so but I like. I mean, yeah, I like all the early. I like all the early Bond stuff. I liked. Britt Eklund was really good, Man with Golden Gun. My dad always had to say that what's her name, Jane Seymour in Live and Let Die was his, which is awkward, but yeah. So because Live and Let Die was my late father's favorite Bond movie. He loved Paul McCartney's Live and Let Die theme. He loved just the whole. It took place it was like one of the early. I think it was one of the first Bonds to take place in like a city, in like an American city. Mm-hmm. It takes place in New York. So, I mean, they were in America. They were in the United States in the Goldfinger, but they were in like freaking Fort Knox. So, well, yeah. Well, actually, no. Diamonds Are Forever. They were also in Las Vegas, but
yeah.
Well, Live and Let Die. They were in freaking New York and stuff. And
weren't they in America?
My dad was a teenager. He really liked the movie, so it was one of his favorites growing up. And Roger, I mean, that was a great movie, to be honest. So, but yeah, I liked those movies. And I think the later ones were, I mean, you had freaking, I thought in Goldeneye, I thought, what's her name? The villainess was better than I don't even remember who the main Bond girl was in Goldeneye. I just remember, I thought the villainess was way more attractive than the Bond girl. Natalia was her name, I think.
Yeah, Natalia.
So. But yeah, so I don't really have a favorite. They're all. I love them all.
Yeah, they're
not all of them. I really like the earlier ones were the best. They hired. I thought they hired some really really good.
Mm-hmm.
Some really good Bond girls in the beginning and stuff. So, I think we're getting close to an hour and a half, and I think the last thing I want to do is let's rank our favorite Bond movies. You want to do a top 5 or top 10?
Sure. Yeah. And I would say that this is in no particular order, because it's hard for me to really say. Again, there's so many. I haven't seen so many of them in such a long time, but top 5 in no particular order for me would be You Only Live Twice. I love The Man with the Golden Gun, Goldfinger, Moonraker, and probably Skyfall. Those would be my top 5 Bond movies.
Okay. My top 5, and I'll be honest, I haven't given this a whole lot of thought, but I think number 5 for me would be number 5 would be Goldeneye. 1990, the movie and stuff. It just I feel the I saw the movie initially. I initially got bored with it, but then after I played the game and then rewatched the movie, then that's really when the movie really kind of clicked with me and stuff. So I just love that whole segment. Double O Sean Bean as 006, being the villain. That whole train segment was pretty cool. So you had the evil Xenia, the evil femme fatale, and you had evil 006, and then you had that Russian general dude. I forget his name. And they were all holding her hostage, and that was pretty. That whole train segment was awesome. And he had the watch with the laser and stuff. So Goldeneye would be number 5 for me. Number 4 would probably be Spy Who Loved Me from 1977. That's the one with Jaws. That was the first one with Jaws. First part takes place in Egypt. Pyramids. They're trying to figure out, why are British? I think they're British subs are disappearing. British and American subs are vanishing. And so they're trying to get to the bottom of that. And then of course we meet Jaws along the way, and there was the James Bond. He had that card that he drives it into the water and it becomes a boat. So that was another early segment that I saw as a kid. Was my parents watching Spy Who Loved Me. So I didn't know that was Bond at the time. I just remembered a guy was in a car that turned into a boat, or a submarine in the water and stuff. So, but yeah, so Spy Who Loved Me would be number 4. I think it's the best of the Roger Moore films. Number 3, I'm gonna go with Thunderball. I think Thunderball was made for the cinema. It was not originally a Ian Fleming novel. It was a collaboration between Ian Fleming, another guy named Kevin McClory, and someone else to make a movie of James Bond, for something that would fit the screen. So because of that, because of more than one person involved, Thunderball, they couldn't do Thunderball right away. They initially wanted to make Thunderball the first or second movie and stuff, but they couldn't do it until for years. So it wasn't until the 4th movie that they were able to make Thunderball. So there were a lot of rights issues going on, and I don't know if you guys know. I'm sure you know, but Connery played Bond once more in 1983. Same year Octopussy came out. He made Never Say Never Again, which was basically a retelling of Thunderball. Of course, they retooled it to match his age and stuff, and it was the same. It was basically the same characters. There was Spectre, there was Blofeld, and played by Max von Sydow of all people, and you had Largo. Instead of Largo having a menacing eye patch in Thunderball, he was just a normal guy, just a normal evil sounding European, German. I think he's German or Austrian guy. So, but Thunderball was just freaking amazing. The set pieces underwater, the underwater fights were brilliant. I thought Largo was a very menacing villain. He just looking at him with that unblinking single eye. And an eye patch is just very, very menacing. And maybe because he's also Italian, that Italian, he's got that Italian, old Italian, that look that just makes him so menacing and stuff. So, and then of course you have.
Brian, you're saying Italians are menacing?
No, well, that's just that look, just that look, the makeup. I'll say makeup, But yeah, then the beginning of the movie was great too, and they made fun of that in Austin Powers, where Austin Powers thinks that this woman is actually a male agent and stuff, and he keeps punching her. Stop punching her, she's a real woman and stuff, which was making fun of the beginning of Thunderball, where he had where he kills that one assassin who was masquerading as his wife and stuff. And then, of course, he gets away with the jetpack. I don't know if you remember that part. He gets away with the jetpack and stuff. But
so I just noticed someone put in the chat, "Never Say Never," where Sean Connery was wearing a wig. Actually, fun fact: he wore a hairpiece in every James Bond movie.
Yeah, because he lost his hair when he was a teenager, I believe. So
yeah.
So he wore a hairpiece. He was always bald. And apparently it's the same thing for William Shatner too, according to George Takei. So who knows? But yeah, Sean Connery. We know Sean Connery's bald. We've seen him bald. I mean, in the '80s, especially as Indy's dad. But so yeah, number 3 for me is Thunderball. Number 2 is Goldfinger. That movie, the beginning from that movie from beginning to end is just it's pure there's a lot of cheesiness, but there's just so many just so many memorable moments in that movie. From obviously from the beginning of the movie where he blows up those was it marijuana silos or something, to him fighting a guy and using and like literally knocking a guy in the bathtub and then throwing the radio in the bathtub to fry him and stuff. And then of course you have Odd Job. Who doesn't forget Odd Job, with especially that initial moment that introduces him. Well, after he karate chops Bond without seeing him, you just see a silhouette. But we see that famous shot of him taking the hat off and just throwing it like a frisbee and it beheads the statue. And of course, Bond says, "Well, what is the Bond trying to get one up on Goldfinger, saying, hey, what's the owner of the club going to say about this?" He's like, "Oh, nothing. I own the club." So, and then it just all builds up to the whole heist of Fort Knox, and it almost succeeds until Bond, it didn't quite almost succeed because Pussy Galore and her people switched the canisters. So Bond managed to convince her not to go through with this. I mean, last thing you want to see is a destroyed economy and stuff, inflation galore. But yeah, so Goldfinger is number 2. Just to me, it's the blueprint for every single Bond movie. It is literally the blueprint for every single Bond movie that came after, in my opinion. Well, maybe not so much the Craig movies, because the Craig movies are doing stuff a little bit differently, but it was pretty much a blueprint. And my first one is, and I know a lot of people probably won't see this, but my first one's From Russia with Love, because it's just so different from all the other films. It didn't have instead of having a set villain, it was basically Bond is on a mission. The whole movie is him being on a mission, and there's an agent from Spectre basically trying to undermine that mission, or basically they set up that mission and then they try to undermine it at the very end by taking the decoder device and stuff. So there wasn't really a central villain. There wasn't really a big central set piece. It was just it was just an organization that just wanted Bond out of the way, and they decided that, and they used that the events of that movie to try to pull that off, and it didn't work. So in the original novel, which is apparently John F. Kennedy's one of his favorite books, one of his top 10 books of 1962, or 1960. In that book, it was the Soviet organization SMERSH, which is mentioned in the movie, but because they didn't want to, piss off, the Soviet Union at the time, they made the villain Spectre instead. But it was originally SMERSH that was trying to get rid of Bond. So all the villains in the early Bond books, like Casino Royale, Live and Let Die, Moonraker, were all agents of SMERSH. And I think SMERSH is basically the organization that says death to spies or something. It's this Russian organization that says death to spies or something. So yeah, my number 1's From Russia with Love. Until I rewatch it, maybe I'll change my mind. So that's the Nerdporial rank of Bond films.
Well, thank you, Nerdporial.
So yeah, you have any other things you want to add? We're almost at 2 hours, and I think we've said all we wanted to say.
Yeah, I just want to close off saying, well, thank you for having me here. Look forward to doing this again in the future. But James Bond, for those people who haven't really seen any of the movies, maybe any of the movies pre-Brosnan or pre-Craig, you can really just kind of start anywhere. I think the Blofeld trilogy is probably one of the best classic Bond trilogies to watch. But I mean, they don't have a very strong, underwriting narrative, so you can really just watch them in any order. And it's a good kind of timepiece of or a good view at filmmaking and what movies were all about before the big blockbuster. So I recommend them highly. They're fun movies. You need to take, I guess, a little bit of time to get through them. They're not all super exciting and crazy, but all in all, I think it's a good, worthwhile thing to check it out.
Well, thank you, Marty. Thank you for coming on and joining me for this little stream. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the chat for coming on and having to listen to me for almost 2 hours now. So I'm gonna definitely cover. I'm going to go see the movie hopefully Wednesday or Thursday. See No Time to Die, and I want to do another stream where I just talk about my reactions and my thoughts on it and stuff. So expect that this week. Metroid Dread is going to be coming out on Friday. I'm planning on streaming that on Friday. So if you're planning on playing the game, I wouldn't watch the stream, but if you're still interested in learning about the game, come on, check me out. That'd be cool. And of course, at I think 3:30, I think I have it scheduled. My my Halloween video is going to premiere. My first Serial Horror Sessions video is going to premiere talking about Halloween 1 and Halloween 2. So it was originally supposed to be out this morning. I apologize. Apparently, Halloween 2, I could not use clips from Halloween 2 because of the studio that owns Halloween 2. So I had to kind of retool it with instead of video footage or instead of video clips, I use screenshots. So hopefully that will premiere at 3:30, and if you're interested, check that out too. So once again, thank you everyone for joining me. Marty, I appreciate you coming on. I know this was really short notice. You're a busy man. You have family and stuff. So I really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the chat. So other than that, to say final words, if you're interested, go see the movie. Go see Bond. Check out if you haven't seen any of the Bond movies or want to rewatch them. I'd say do it. This is the perfect time to do it. And just a last thing to say: stay nerdporial, everyone, and may the wings of nerdporials carry you to happiness. Have a good one.